Make that work.
What did I do?
The Raspberry Pi 4. This little tiny device might be the best thing to learn Linux, hacking, programming, and that's exactly what I'm going to use mine for. You see, my wife and I, we homeschool our kids, and I want them to learn Linux. I want them to become hackers and programmers and everything, and I'm gonna turn this guy into a desktop for them to learn.
Okay guys, here's the special part. Raspberry Pi.
So in this video, with the help of my daughters, we're going to walk through the setup of making this the ultimate learning desktop.
Oh, it's so cute! Is this a pencil sharpener?
No, it's a heat sink.
What? Let's go heat up a sink.
Now this won't be your average Raspberry Pi setup. We're gonna do a few things, tweak a few things. Starting with the basics of just how to plug it in, set up the SD card, we'll move on to how to set up BerryBoot, which allows us to boot and use multiple flavors of Linux, all from just one little SD card. No switching SD cards, just one guy. We'll then look at setting up multi-user login so all my kids can log in and use it, and then also even setting up a few hacking tools. And speaking of hacking, I like to thank the sponsor of today's video, NordLocker. NordLocker is designed to keep your data safe. Now, I don't know if you heard me mention that I'm teaching my daughters how to hack, so yeah, watch out. So NordLocker is here to help out and protect you from my daughters by encrypting your data, keeping it safe and hidden wherever it is. But how does NordLocker keep you safe? Well, let's say this is your data, your super secret data that you don't want anyone to ever see or ever find. Sometimes you'll want to share that data with people you work with, people you trust. So you'll take that data and you'll send it over the internet. But what can happen is a hacker might intercept this message and want to look at your data. And without data encryption, the hacker can see exactly what it says. But now if you take that same bit of data and you encrypt it with NordLocker, and you share that same file with your friend over the internet, if the hacker does intercept it, the hacker can't see your data. It's encrypted. The only people who can see your data are you and the people you decide to share it with and give access. No, get out of my office.
Okay.
Thank you for your help. Encrypting your files is super simple and easy. I'll create a file with all my secret super secret data, and then all I have to do is just drag it onto my NordLocker application, and it's going to encrypt it, and it's encrypted just like that. Like, that was encryption, and it happened. It's safe now. And I can throw these files in the cloud, Google Cloud, Dropbox. I can also send them via email, and they stay safe along the entire journey. They have apps available for Windows and Mac, and they encrypt your data using the latest advanced ciphers, which basically means they can do a really good job at making your data safe. And hey, the best part about this, you can get NordLocker for free up to 2 gigs at the link below, or use coupon code NETWORKCHUCK. So here we go. With the help of my daughters, we'll set up our Raspberry Pi 4 or any Raspberry Pi for the ultimate learning experience. Let's do it. Now, what do you need to get started?
Here's what you need to get started.
Well, of course you'll need a Raspberry Pi. 4, 3, I wouldn't go below that. You'll need one of those tiny little micro SD cards. I would say 16 gigabytes to 32 gigabytes, 32 preferably.
Oh, you're so cute.
You'll also need a little USB adapter so you can plug this into your computer and get it ready to go. You'll then need
Power cable. An HDMI cable.
a monitor, keyboard, and mouse. Oh, and don't forget, you'll need another computer to set up your micro SD card. So let's go ahead and do that right now, actually. You'll take that tiny little guy, and you'll plug him into your USB adapter.
Which way?
And then we'll take that USB adapter and plug it into our computer. Once you have your SD card plugged in, we'll go download a tool to make this guy fresh and ready to go. I'll just Google SD card formatter, and that should find what we're looking for. It's a tool called the SD memory card formatter from the SD Association. What's great about this tool is that you can download it for Linux or Windows, so the process will be the same. I'm using Windows, so I'll click on For Windows to download this guy. Scroll down to the bottom, accept all their terms, of course, and then download that sucker, run it, and then install it. Once you have that installed, we'll launch the program. SD card formatter. Now here you can select your card. Make sure you select the right one. You don't want to destroy some valuable information that you have. Like right now, mine is defaulted to an SD card that has stuff on it that I don't want to destroy. So I know the one I want to mess up and make clean is E. If you're unsure, you can unplug it, see what's missing, plug it back in, but just be cautious. And from here, I'll leave everything as default. I'll just do a quick format, and I'll click format, and then yes, and boom. It is complete, it is fresh, ready for us to put some stuff on it. I'll close that program and then I'm gonna get back to my web browser. Go back to Google and I'll search for a program called BerryBoot, or a tool. Don't worry, I'll put links below for all of this. It's the BerryBoot bootloader, which allows us to have multiple flavors of Linux. Such a cool thing to do. Here we have 2 links, one for Raspberry Pi 4. Very important you do that if you have the Raspberry Pi 4, and then for the 3, 2, 0, whatever, download that tool. So I have the 4, I'll download it for the 4. It'll take me to SourceForge, and then it will start downloading now. I will open my File Explorer and go to my Downloads folder where I just downloaded BerryBoot. And here he is. It's a zip folder, so I need to unzip it. Zip. And I'll right-click that and select Extract All. And extract that. It'll automatically open the folder for me. And when it finishes, it'll do that. There it all is. So it's important that you extract it first. You unzip it. And then whatever you have left, which should be inside the BerryBoot folder that it creates. We're going to take all of that inside the folder, copy it. And then we'll jump over to our newly formatted, our newly fresh, clean SD card, and we will paste the contents of the stuff we just copied. And we'll let that paste. And boom, we're done. Like, our SD card is ready to go. BerryBoot is solid. Time to take it out and put it in your Raspberry Pi. But hold on, we need to plug up our Raspberry Pi. We need to put all the components together. I'll let my girls show you how to do that as I, offer a little help. If you purchase one of those Cana kits, which gives you the Raspberry Pi and all the components, like just everything you need, which I highly encourage you to do, it makes it super easy. It will come with some cool stuff like some heat sinks to put on your components to make sure your Raspberry Pi doesn't get too stinking hot. Ours actually came with a fan as well. So I have my girls stick them on there.
There we go. With the tiny guy. There we go.
And then they also come with a case, which, by the way, none of this is required. You can run your Raspberry Pi just like this, naked, with nothing on it. It'll be fine. I've done it before. May it overheat? Yeah. Is it going to blow up? I don't know. But I keep these running naked like this, and it's usually fine. But anyways, if you have a case, pop that into your case. Make sure you match your ports. Got it? If you have a fan, plug that fan. The fan we had, you'll plug it into some GPIO pins on the Raspberry Pi, which offer a 5-volt and ground connection for your fan. You can refer to the GPIO pinout diagram for the Raspberry Pi 4, 3, whatever you have. And once you have everything plugged up and snug, looking kind of like this, then you can take that little micro SD card. Actually, where did it go? Did I lose him? Oh, he's right here. Woo! Take him out of that USB adapter and slide that guy into your Raspberry Pi.
Here we go, guys. I'm gonna put this little dollar card and say this dollar card.
Doll card?
Because it has a money on it.
It doesn't have money.
It does. I'm gonna put this right there.
Now, woo! Here comes the fun part. We're gonna plug in our power cord.
This is my power cord. I'm gonna put it inside the Raspberry Pi.
Push it in.
Now I'm gonna plug this little thing inside the Raspberry Pi. Okay guys, there we go. A little Raspberry Pi charging.
We're going to plug in our HDMI cord to the Raspberry Pi and then to our monitor.
Guys,
Don't do that.
look, there's a mama and that's the little kid.
Do you know what that's for?
This one. Okay guys, so I think it's this one.
We also can't forget our keyboard and mouse. We won't get very far without that. In my case, I had a USB wireless mouse and keyboard, so that's perfect. Wired is fine too. Now, if you have one of these cool power switches, it'll just turn on and off when you hit the button.
And
Hit the switch.
action. Okay, so let's like that.
Otherwise, it would have powered on immediately if you plugged into the wall. If you start seeing some Raspberry Pis going across the screen, you know you're in the right place. And if you see this screen, it means you set up BerryBoot perfectly. Great job. And let's configure it. Disable overscan? Yes, leave that there. Network connection. If you're plugging in an Ethernet cable, leave that to wired. If you're connecting to Wi-Fi like I am, we'll choose Wi-Fi. It auto-detected that I was indeed in the US, but I'm not in New York. I am in the central time zone, which will normally be Chicago. Test the keyboard. It works! And I'll click OK. And then it found my Wi-Fi connections. Mine will be port key. Then I'll put in my password. I'll click OK. It'll connect to my Wi-Fi here. Then you'll get this screen, and I'll pause real quick. This is the power of BerryBoot. I have 2 options. One is the storage on the SD card plugged into my Raspberry Pi. We're going to use that option. That's the most common option. But then we have the option for network-attached storage. I can actually boot an operating system off of a remote storage, a SAN, somewhere else, which is cool. We're not going to do that now. Maybe we'll do that later. Maybe I should do that later. I kind of want to do that now. But no, we're going to go with the first option, my 32 gig SD card. File system ext4, perfect. Let's do that. And I will format. Formatting complete. Now to pick our first operating system, which is kind of exciting. Now you'll notice that there's not a lot going on in my menu because I have a Raspberry Pi 4. If you have a 3, you might have a lot more here. There should be more down the road for the Raspberry Pi 4, but it's new. They're trying to adjust some things for it because he's got to be all different and stuff with a 64-bit architecture. However, this is fine right now. Now my first OS of choice will be Raspbian, the Debian-based OS for the Raspberry Pi. It's built for the Raspberry Pi. I'm going to pick that every time. That'll be the main driver for my girls as they learn hacking, Linux, programming, all that stuff. I want the full version because I want all the bells and whistles, all the goodies, and this will be installing over the network, which means it's going to download the OS and then install it right now. So I'll click OK, and it's doing it. Now my time might be a bit faster. I do have pretty fast internet at my house. Your time could be a bit longer, no worries. Let it finish. That's good. No, all the way to the top.
Whoa. It looks like there's actually creamer in it. Look at me. Oh my God. Here you go, Dad. I like doing that way.
Hey, do you like coffee?
Yeah.
No, you don't.
Yes, I do.
No, you don't.
Okay. Yes, I do. Raspberry Pi. Oh, it's hot. I don't like it.
No, hold on. Go for it. Do you like it?
Oh, that's
And you'll receive this lovely message once it is done. Click OK to reboot, and it will reboot. Go. Now don't go anywhere. Sit there and watch this. You have 10 seconds to decide what you're going to do, or just click around. There we go. Whew, saved myself. Here, if you just waited, it would automatically boot into your Raspbian or the first OS, whatever you chose. This will be your default. You can stop here, you're fine. Or you can add some more OSs, more Linux, which we will do right now. So I'll click on Edit Menu. Now we're going to add an OS. I'll go and click Add OS. We're back at that same screen. It tells us what we have available. We get that cool little hard drive there next to the ones we already added, which is just that guy there. Now the ones I want to look at are not the appliances, but the others. The others. And this is just so cool. The fact that we're adding multiple OSs to our Raspberry Pi. Crazy multi-booting on a Raspberry Pi. So we have some fun ones here. One that I wanted to add was Sugar, which is like an OS built for kids. I downloaded it for my 3-year-old to keep her busy while my wife is homeschooling the 2 older kids. And it's great.
We're going back.
They also have Ubuntu Server, which is pretty stinking cool. You can practice all your Ubuntu stuff. And then Puppy Linux. I don't know what's cool about Puppy Linux, but I downloaded it anyway just to see what it was like, and I don't know. Comment below if you know what's cool about Puppy Linux. I have no idea. So for now, I'll download Sugar, click OK, and of course it'll go through the same process of downloading it and then installing it. And when you're done adding all your extra operating systems, you can click Exit, which I'll do, which will reboot and get you back to that same boot menu. Now I'm not going to freak out. I'm going to let it do its thing right now. I'm going to let it boot to its default boot OS, Raspbian. Now what's cool about this is the Wi-Fi you set up in the boot menu is automatically applied to Raspbian already. Like I'm already connected, which is super cool. Love that feature. Now you may have noticed that when we booted into this Raspberry Pi, no login screen. It just defaulted, boom, we're in there. That's what it does by default. Right now we are the user Pi, but we don't want that to happen. I want my daughters to be able to log in to their own profiles every time this thing boots up. So let's make that the default behavior. We will open up our terminal. Our terminal for the first time, here we are. Let's make our text a bit bigger. Whew, maybe too big, but hey, at least you guys can see it now, right? Let's make my terminal here a bit bigger. Cool. To make this change, you'll have to edit a file. Now, and that might sound scary if this is your first time messing with Linux. Don't worry, I'll walk you through it. So the first thing we're going to do is change our directory from where we are in the terminal. Change directory, it'll be CD. for change directory. Pretty simple, right? And we'll go to the directory, etc. lightdm. Lightdm. So make sure you got your slashes in there, your /, and you just change directories. Notice how your path here changed. That's how you know you're there. From here, we're going to use the text editor nano. Now, make sure you do sudo, or sudo, however people say it, to make sure you have godlike master permissions. This gives you authority every time you execute a command in Linux. So I'll say sudo nano, which is the text editor we'll be using. It's the most user-friendly one out there. That's why I'm using this now. And then the file, which is lightdm.conf. And we're in the file. Now, using your directional arrows, we'll scroll down pretty far down, actually, until we find... Where are you? We'll find it eventually. And I passed it. There it is. You can see everything else here is commented out, or it has a pound sign in front of it. That means it's not being used, except for the auto login user equals pi. We don't want that to happen. We don't want any kind of auto login to happen, so we're going to comment that out. We're going to put a pound sign right in front. And that was it. That's our only change, just that one little character change. And then we'll hit Control X to get out of there. It's going to say, hey, you got some changes. You want to save those. Hit Y and then Enter. And you're done. You did it. Now my kids got to log into this thing, right? So I'm going to clear my terminal. I'm going to create some user accounts. Now I had them do this, and I'll walk them through it, of course. But I think it's important for them to get their hands on the command line, to actually type some stuff in. And again, we'll walk through this. It's really not too crazy. So check this out. It's only a few commands. Actually, just one command. I'm going to use the command add user. Add user. All one word. And then right after that, you put in the user account you want to use. So my daughter, she put in Chloe Panda. That's what she wanted to use. And look what we did. We didn't use the sudo command, which gives us root permissions. It says root has to add a user to the system. Only root can do that. By saying sudo, we're saying, well, root said I could. So I'm going to clear this out. I'm going to, clar. Like a pirate, clar. Clear. And this time we're going to use sudo add user Chloe Panda. And now let's see if that happens. Yeah, it did. And so it added the user. Now it's taking us through kind of a setup, like, hey, the user password. So I have my daughters enter in their own secure passwords. And then you can put in some profile information like full names and room number. This often might be used in classrooms, so super cool thing to do. And then they don't have phone numbers. And is the information correct? Yes, it is. And we're done. I'll add one more. My middle child, Addie, picked Addie Pig. I don't know, she's into pigs right now or something. And same situation. Now to quickly verify the accounts you created to make sure they're actually there, you can look at a particular file that contains all that information. We can quickly read a file by using the cat command. My daughters love that. We'll do cat and then the actual file that has this. This will be etc. passwd. And right there at the bottom, I can see my two users I just created, Chloe Panda and Addie Pig, with all of their groups and attributes. So now let's test that out. I'm going to log out. I'll go to the Raspberry up there at the top and do shutdown and then log out. And sure enough, it worked. We got Addie, we got Chloe, and we got the default Pi. I'll log in as Addie here. And I have my daughters log in and create their own personalization. They added their own desktop photo. And that's the misnomer about Linux, right? Like you think Linux is just command line, which I did say that Linux is scary because it often seems like it's only command line, but it has pretty GUIs too. Anyways, now we're logged in as Addie. So that totally worked. Now I want them to be able to remote into this Raspberry Pi from their iPads. So when they're up in their rooms or whatever they're doing, I want them to be able to log into it and practice whatever they want to practice. Also, it's just cool, so let's make that happen. So I will again launch my terminal, and it's been reset because we're now on a new profile, so I'll have to adjust my preferences here again. Come on. Okay, now with our super large terminal font, now something real quick. Addie doesn't have the same permissions as Pi. We were logged in as Pi before, we were making system changes, and by using sudo, we were like, hey, root said I could. Addie doesn't have the backing that Pi has. We need to pretend that we're going to be the user Pi. We can do that by using the su command. So I'll do su and then the username Pi. I'm going to impersonate the user Pi, and it'll ask me for Pi's password. Now the default password for Pi is Raspberry. So I'll use that now. I do recommend you changing that, but for now it's fine. And now I'm suddenly Pi. Anyways, now we're going to allow some remote access to our Raspberry Pi. I will do sudo raspi-config. This is a special little configuration walkthrough to help you configure your Raspberry Pi. Anyways, we'll do that now. And look how pretty it is. Using our directional pad, we'll scroll down to interfacing options number 5, and I'll hit enter. And there's one thing we're going to change. Actually, two if you are wanting to do this. First is SSH. You can remotely access the command line. Secure shell. Let's go ahead and enable that. Done. And then we'll get back to option 5, interfacing options, and this is the one we can use with our iPad, VNC, P3 here. Enter, and we will click or use the directional pad to scoot over to yes and say yes, and it's been enabled. Perfect. And then I can use tab to switch over to finish, and that was it. Not too bad, right? Now there's one more thing we want to change to make sure they can remotely access this Raspberry Pi all the time without any issues, and that's changing it from DHCP to static on the IP address allocation. Now, what does all that gobbledygook mean? Well, if I do ifconfig to see what IP address this Raspberry Pi has, I can see under WLAN 0, which is the interface I'm using, the wireless interface, I've got my IP address, 10.7.1.119. If I wanted to remote into this Raspberry Pi, I will remote into that IP address. I point at that IP address. The problem is, it's using DHCP, which means it's a dynamic IP address assignment. Basically, that means this IP address could change. It probably will change. So one day when they're trying to access it from their iPad, it doesn't work. So we'll want to change it to make it static. We'll say, I want you to be this IP, don't you ever change, and it won't ever change because it's a computer. It does what you tell it to do. So let's do that. Now, it's not too scary, and I'm going to walk you through it. So I'm going to clear my screen by typing in clear, or from a pirate, klar, and using sudo, once again saying, hey, root's got my back. I'm going to use nano to edit a file. This file is /etc. A lot of stuff in etc, etc. And it's dhcpcd.conf. Now again, lots of scary lines. It's a text file, but if we scroll all the way down to pretty much nearly the bottom, actually no, right here, example static IP configuration, and we can make our changes. Notice everything is commented out, or it has that same pound sign, which means it's not being used. We want to remove that pound sign and make our changes. So interface Ethernet 0. Now, I'm not using Ethernet 0. Now, if you have an Ethernet cable plugged into your Raspberry Pi, this is what you'll want to have, but I'm using the wireless interface, so I'll change it to WLAN 0. For most of you, that will be the case, I'm assuming. And then I'll set my IP address. So I'll uncomment the static IP address line, and I'll set my IP address, which on my network, I'm going to have it set to 10.7.1. Let's just say 35. And then it's a /24 subnet mask. In a lot of cases on a lot of home networks, you might have 192.168.1. And you can put like something like 45, and it will be also a /24. But just check your router settings. Static IPv6 address, we're not using IPv6, don't worry about that. And then static routers. This will be your router's IP address. Your home router, your work router, whatever you're using. It's your default gateway. Mine is 10.7.1.3. And a lot of networks, if you're using the 192 address again, it might be 192.168.1.1. It's normally .1. In my case, I just have to be different. Changing it actually makes you more secure. I'm setting it to .3. And then domain name servers, your DNS servers. It's what your computer will use to say, hey, where's Facebook? Where's Google? You want to change that. So I'll remove all this information right here. And just to keep it simple, I'll put in Google 8.8.8.8. That's Google's DNS server. You can use that. It's what a lot of network engineers and IT people use. It'll work just fine. And with that, I'm done. Like that was it. If I hit Control X to get out, press yes, and enter, it's changed. Now, if I do ifconfig, it won't show just yet. I'll need to reboot my machine. So let's go ahead and reboot it. What are we waiting for? So I'll do sudo reboot right here from the command line. Bam. I'll go ahead and log in as Addy again. Oh, it's giving me a warning. Hey, SSH is enabled. Your default password for Pi has not been changed. You know what? Let's go ahead and change that. Let's be secure. So I'm gonna make sure I don't get that message again, and make sure I'm, being secure, because we are gonna do hacking here soon, aren't we? So to change the password for Pi, I'm going to impersonate Pi once more. So I'll do su Pi. I'll enter Pi's password, raspberry, for now. And then I'll enter the command passwd, PASSWD. And that's all you have to do to change your password. And because I'm impersonating Pi, I'm like, hey, I'm Pi right now. I put on the Pi mask, hey, I'm Pi. I can change the password for Pi by entering that command. So I'll enter the current password, and then my new password. And we're secure once more. Now, from here, if I do ifconfig, again to see, no, you type it right, ifconfig, to see what my IP address is now, look at that. My static IP address is set. Let's make sure we can actually get out to the internet, make sure I didn't break it. So let's launch the internet browser. And I'll go to like Google or something. And sure enough, it's working just fine. Now I have a confession to make. There is an easier way to change the IP address on your Raspberry Pi. You don't have to use the command line. You can use the GUI configuration. So if you went up to your Wi-Fi marker cursor up here, if you right-click that, right-click, there we go. Wireless and wired network settings, click that. Now because I'm not logged in as Pi, I don't have access to actually change anything, but if I were logged in as Pi, I can go in here, change this to WLAN 0, and then make the configuration changes. If I were Pi, if I try it now, like if I were to change this to .36 and try to apply that, it's like, you can't do that. You can't make a change to that file. See, it's that same file we were changing. Isn't that cool? Like you saw behind the scenes now. So this is like, why would you use this? You have the power of the command line. Sorry, I'm getting a little excited. Anyways. So now my kids can remote access this Raspberry Pi, which they think is super cool. And hey, I think this is super cool. You'll need to download an application called VNC, which is free on iPads and free on pretty much everything. And all you got to do is put in the IP address and you're accessing your device remotely. Now, I mentioned hacking. What about hacking? How can we hack with this thing? I don't see any Kali Linux, which Kali Linux is a flavor of Linux that has a ton of hacking tools. You don't have Kali on here, Chuck. I didn't see an option for Kali in the multi BerryBoot stuff. You're right. I'm sorry. Maybe it's coming down the road sometime. But can I tell you a secret? It's a big secret. You don't need Kali Linux to hack. Why is that? Well, because all the tools that you have pre-installed on Kali, you can install those on other Linux distributions, which means we can install Kali tools on Raspbian, where we're at right now. So let's do that. So I'm going to clear my terminal here. Now, real quick, before I can install anything, I have to make sure I update my repositories. Basically, my list of things I can apply and update. So this isn't actually installing an update, so it'll be really quick. But if I do sudo apt update, this will update that list of stuff. It shouldn't take too long. Now, time to install some hacking tools. One of my favorites is Yersinia, a popular tool to hack networking stuff. Cisco switches, Cisco routers, really fun stuff. So I'll do apt install Yersinia. Actually, I'm going to do Control A to go back to the beginning of my line and type in sudo. So I can say, hey, root's got my back. Yersinia, spelled it right. Yeah, okay, cool. Hit enter. It's going to say, hey, I found it. It's this big. 1 meg. That's cool. I'm going to do that. Hit Y and enter, and it's installing Yersinia for me. Done. So now let's type Yersinia, maybe do a -- help to see what we can do with this. Oh, got to be root. Okay, sorry. Root's got my back. Sudo. We'll do graphical mode. So I'll try sudo Yersinia, and then -G, capital G. Ooh, look at this. Oh, it's an alpha version of the GUI. No big deal. But here I am using a hacking tool on Raspbian. No Kali Linux required. Let's do one more, right? Let's try and install a popular one called Ettercap. Great for man-in-the-middle stuff and just a ton of good stuff. So I'll do apt install Ettercap. And I keep forgetting stinking sudo. There we go. Oh, we got two options. Let's install Ettercap graphical. Yes, I do want to install it. Kind of big though, 2.5 megs. Worth it. And we're done. That was actually pretty quick. So I'm going to do sudo Ettercap, do -- help to see what I can do with this. Looks like it's the same situation. We can do -G and get a graphical interface. Let's do it. Oh yeah, look at that. Y'all don't come to my house. I got people hacking with Raspberry Pis. Now overall, the Raspberry Pi 4 is a pretty great little device. It does a lot for how big it is. The one we were testing on is the Raspberry Pi 4 with 4 gigs of RAM, which means you can do a lot more at one time. And we put it through the test. I let my kids play Minecraft. I had them do their daily coding activities, which is using an app called Tinker, a web-based app.
That's awesome.
And it actually loaded pretty well. Now, it didn't load fast. I'll tell you this. It wasn't like, wow, that was impressive. It was like, oh, it's taking a while to load. But hey, it loaded, so it totally worked. And then watching YouTube videos, no problem. It actually did great with watching videos. So can it be a true desktop replacement? For a power user, no. No, it won't be, because you'll be doing a lot more than what this little guy can handle. But for daily tasks like learning Linux or trying a few hacking scripts or learning coding, this thing's perfect. It really is. And pretty much everything from web browsing to editing documents and stuff can be done by this little guy. So perfect for my kids. Like, they're not doing anything crazy. And the fact that they can play Minecraft on this is pretty cool too. So what do you think? Do you think any of us will be replacing our desktops with a Raspberry Pi 4 or maybe even the Pi 5 down the road? Let me know your thoughts below. I know for now, this is the perfect device for my kids to learn and play around and tinker with things and possibly even break it, because kids often break things. So for $35, I can stomach that price of letting them just have at it. If you'd like to pick up a Raspberry Pi 4, I've got links below, so yeah. Now this is just the basics of what you can do with the Raspberry Pi 4. If you want to see what else you can do, like maybe you want to do some network automation using this as a controller, check that out up here. Or maybe you want to use this as a Halloween prop controller and control your Halloween props like I did up here. You can do so much with these things. Speaking of which, what else do you want to see me talk about? What else do you want to see about these Raspberry Pis? Any particular projects? Let me know below. Well guys, that's about it. If you like this video, hit that like button. If you haven't already, subscribe. Hang out with me. I do a lot of videos. Well, I try to at least. And I have a live stream every Tuesday now. So anyways, that's about it. Yeah, I'll catch you guys later.